Welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3425 AM. Today's date is August 12th, 2024, and the title of the episode is The Central Bank Will Not Be Able to Weather the Economic Storm That Is Approaching. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, it seems that they are now trapped in their own doing. Remember, Trump and the Patriots, they always knew from the very, very beginning that they were planning on bringing this entire system down and bringing this system into their new system. And I do believe Trump and the Patriots, they actually played them, because once they took over and they thought they were in control, everything started to go the opposite way. Think about it. Back in 2020, they thought they had it made. They thought, wow, this is perfect. The Great Reset. We don't even have to start a war. We'll just actually keep everyone in their house. The economy will break down. This will be perfect. And they started the ball rolling. They had their people in place. Everything was going to be perfect, and nobody would be the wiser as they destroy the economic system. Well, Trump, he turned the tables on them because everyone was not stuck in their house. Everyone wasn't afraid. Everyone wasn't trapped for 10 to 12 years, because that's what they projected it would take to actually cure this deadly, deadly pandemic. And they thought over the 12 years, people would commit suicide, people would run out of food, there'd be no health benefits for the people, the entire economic system would break down, and it would be very, very easy to bring the people where they want to go. Trump actually maneuvered, turned the tables on them, and they had to resort back to what? War. They had to resort back to their 16-year plan and actually push the entire world into war. And Trump knew that all he had to do was counter the war with one word. And as war built up, the people would then see the truth and understand that they can't, we the people, everyone else in this world, cannot go into nuclear war, because there will be no winner. And I do believe Trump and the Patriots, they are counting on this. And remember, the deep state, the central bank, they've already started the ball rolling. They already started to destroy their own system. And Trump will use this leverage to his advantage. And the central bank, they will not be able to weather this storm in the end. Because, again, they believe that they have control. But remember, there's a bill that is passed in the House, which is the central bank digital currency. Trump already said that he is not going to allow the central bank digital currency. He's already talked about Bitcoin, already talked about having Bitcoin as a reserve. And this is going to destroy the deep state, the central bank. And once he ushers in peace, it will be game over. So as we approach the election, what are people going to see? The people are going to see the entire economic system break down. Now, this is going to reflect on Kamala Harris, and then most likely the next person they bring in. It's going to show that they've been lying to the people. And Trump, at that point, will have the people. Now, remember, Obama used this same exact strategy back in 2008. While the Republicans were saying the economy was great, McCain was out there saying it was fantastic, Obama was on the other end saying, no, there's something wrong with the economy. Now, no one believed him until the market came down. The same thing is going to happen right now. Trump, he turned the tables on them, because who's he really battling right now? He's really battling Obama. Obama is running the show. So basically, he's using the same exact strategy. And as we get closer and closer to the presidential election, what's going to happen? I do believe the market's going to come down, and that will show the world, to show the people of this country, that they've been lied to this entire time. And Trump really knows what he's talking about, and Obama and whoever else is running does not. And we could see as we approach the presidential election, this is exactly what we're seeing. And the economic system is breaking down every step of the way. And the central bank will not be able to weather this storm whatsoever. And when you look at Americans today, they feel it every single day. They can, the deep state, the Biden administration, Kamala, whoever else, the Fed, the Treasury, they can lie to the people. It makes no difference at this point. Because when the people feel it and they live it every single day, no matter what they say, they're not going to believe it. If they tell the people that they're rich and the people say, well, I can't even pay this bill, I couldn't pay my gas bill, I couldn't pay my electric bill, this is a disaster. You could tell me I'm rich, but I'm not. And when you look at the actual facts and you look at the debt level, and I'm not talking about the debt level of this country, the debt level of the people, it's a disaster, and this cannot be sustained. each person cannot sustain the amount of debt. It's impossible. Genevieve Roekdecter put this out and said Americans owe $1.14 trillion, up 48% since COVID. Delinquencies hit a decade high in the second quarter, with 10.93% of accounts 90 plus days overdue. Borrowers are struggling, the average credit card charging plus 20% near all-time high. Who can blame them? People are struggling right now, and they realize that cash isn't going to work because they don't have it, so they have to charge it, and what happens is the payments continually move up, interest rates move up, credit card rates move up, and sooner or later, what happens? People are going to start to declare bankruptcies, and we're starting to see this with people and companies. The Cobisi letter on X put this out and said, the number of U.S. bankruptcies currently under Chapter 11 jumps to 2,462, the highest count in 13 years. A Chapter 11 filing involves court-supervised reorganization and allows the company to stay in business and restructure its finances and operations. These bankruptcies have more than doubled in just 2 years. This comes after many companies have struggled to make their debt payments as the Fed raised interest rates to the highest level in 23 years. Now markets are pricing in 50 basis point rate cuts as the U.S. economy is on the verge of a recession. How is this a soft landing? It is not a soft landing, and people are now declaring bankruptcy. Companies are declaring bankruptcy, and it's getting more and more difficult as time goes on. And it will get more difficult because remember, the entire labor market is one gigantic lie. They manipulated the numbers. We never recovered from COVID. Yes, a lot of the jobs went back to the way they were. Biden uses to convince everyone that he's creating jobs when he really wasn't. And now people are starting to see the true labor market. The Cobisi letter on X put this out and said, the index of U.S. consumers saying jobs are plentiful declined to 34.1% in July, the lowest level since March 2021. In other words, Americans are the most pessimistic about the ability to find a new job in 3 years. This share has decreased by approximately 22 points over the last 2 years as the labor market has materially slowed down. In the past, such a rapid decline in consumer sentiment about jobs has always coincided with a recession. Meanwhile, the ratio of job openings per unemployed worker fell from 2 in 2022 to 1.2 in June 2024. The labor market is no longer tight, and the labor market is falling apart. Remember, everything is based on manipulated numbers. So the Fed is going to make their decision on manipulated numbers. The news, the fake news, is reporting on manipulated numbers. The Biden administration is trying to convince the people that the economy is doing well using manipulated numbers. This entire system is manipulated, and it's looking very, very similar to 2008. And I do believe this is about 100 times worse, because right now, at this point, we're already in a recession, going into a deep recession, approaching a depression. And when you look at the delinquency rate on commercial mortgage-backed securities, CMBS, well, that spiked to 8.1% in July. This is the highest in 11 years. The delinquency rate of office CMBS loans has quadrupled in 1.5 years. Delinquencies are currently rising at a faster pace than during the 2008 financial crisis. A top AAA-rated CMBS experienced a $40 million loss in May for the first time since the 2008 financial crisis. Commercial real estate bankruptcies are coming. So again, when we start to look at this, and we start to look at the economy, and we compare it to 2008, it's not like 2008. It's a lot worse than 2008. And it's just going to get worse and worse as time goes on. Now remember, as we approach the presidential election, what does the Biden administration, what does Kamala Harris and whoever else replaces her, because I do believe someone's going to replace her or replace the VP that she nominated, I do believe they're going to have to make an unprecedented move, which is a rate cut, because they're going to have to prove to this country and the world that everything that they have done has worked. And I do believe this is one of the only ways that they can convince the population that what they have done has worked. And it seems that Kamala Harris is jumping on board with whatever Trump says, and she is now plagiarizing him, saying, listen, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have no taxes on tips. But of course, she didn't put it that way. The fake news is trying to build her up and downplay Trump. But again, who said it first? It was Trump. So basically, if you're going to vote, you might as well just vote for Trump, because Trump actually set the policy way before Kamala Harris. But you have to remember, who signed the Inflation Reduction Act? Who was all for it? It was Kamala Harris. And the Inflation Reduction Act does not reduce inflation. Actually, it has the opposite effect. When you look at all the bills the D's pass or the rhinos pass, it's always the opposite of what they tell you. So the Inflation Reduction Act actually caused a lot more inflation. So in this bill, remember, they decided, okay, we're going to have 80,000 newly minted IRS agents. They would be hired, and they were going to go after the billionaires. Now, how many billionaires are there? There are about 813. So are they really going to go just after 813 billionaires? Absolutely not. Who are they actually really going after? The little guys. The Wall Street Journal's editorial page found a Treasury report indicating the middle-class taxpayers were getting the brunt of the IRS offenses, which would also include some tip workers. Tips, after all, are easy pickings for underreporting owing to the lack of paper trail. The most recent data suggests the IRS is still focused on the middle class. As of last summer, 63% of new audits targeted taxpayers with incomes of less than $200,000. It gets worse than that. And here's where the second half of McDonald's tweet is described. With all that new federal money brought to them by Kamala Harris, tie-breaking vote, tip workers were the special little target of the IRS's shiny new army of auditors. And according to the Heritage Foundation President Brasher, in February of 2023, it may come as a surprise then that the IRS is proposing a direct new scrutiny at underreported tips by waitresses, barbers, and bartenders. And who is responsible for all this? Kamala Harris. Remember when she put this out on Twitter or X? She said the following. This is March 7, 2024. I was proud to cast a tie-breaking vote to pass our Inflation Reduction Act, which has capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Now Congress must pass a bill that extends the cap to all Americans. So she was the tiebreaker. And by the way, Trump reduced the insulin prices. Then they raised the insulin prices. Then they reduced the insulin prices. So again, they're lying to the public. And she is the one who actually signed off on this. 80,000 new IRS agents were hired, and now they're going after all those people that are making tips. Now she's trying to take the policies of Trump. Why would she do that? Because it's an election year. These people love to lie. They love to tell you things that they're gonna do. Now, if she really wants to do it, she is now the vice president. Why doesn't she go ahead and remove the taxes from tips? Why doesn't she go ahead and push this? Why didn't they do this from the very, very beginning? They could have done all of this. They are only doing it because it's a presidential election. And I think the people now are seeing this and the people understand this. So again, as we approach the presidential election and the economic system really falls apart, more and more people are now being audited because of their tips and how much they make. And this is not the wealthy people. This is people making under $200,000 a year. The people are going to start to realize that this system is a complete and utter mess. It's breaking down. We're in a deep recession. And the only way that the Biden administration, Kamala, and whoever else is running, the only way they can convince the public is to show them that, hey, no, look, the Fed agrees with us. We're going to reduce the rates, which means the economy is doing really well, and now you can believe us. But again, it's like a ticking time bomb. As weeks pass, all of a sudden, everything's going to start to fall apart. People are going to go, wait a minute, you just told us that everything, just a couple of weeks ago, you told us everything was great. That's why the Fed was able to cut the rates. Now everything's starting to fall apart. Why is this? Who did this? Who's responsible for this? Because again, Kamala, you told us everything was going to be fine. Actually, if you go back a little bit in time, you told us that Bidenomics is fantastic. It's working. Biden, you're telling us that everything is fine. Hey, Fed Chair Jerome Powell, you're telling us that everything was great. And this is why, when you look at all the numbers, the economy's doing great. Unemployment is good. Inflation is down. And this is why you can cut the rates. I thought we were coming into a soft landing. So why does everyone feel like we're in a depression? Why do we feel like everything's falling apart? And why did the market just come down? This is going to be a complete and utter disaster for the deep state players. And I do believe this is going to give Trump all the leverage that he needs to actually destroy the engine of the deep state players. Remember, what is the engine? What does the deep state, what do the criminals need? They need money, lots of money. So what do? They have this engine, which is the Federal Reserve. They have Congress, because they install people into Congress. They have them borrow this money. The money is laundered across the world. They create these organizations like the WHO, the World Bank, the IMF, the World Economic Forum, you name it. They pay scientists and others to put out fake information about climate change. And this is how they control the system. And plus, all these individuals who are laundering the money, they become very, very wealthy. They become very, very powerful. And they are the elite because they are running a cheating system. If and when you destroy, which I do believe Trump and the Patriots are about to do, you destroy their engine, which is the creation of currency, what happens to the World Economic Forum? What happens to the WHO? What happens to the World Bank? What happens to the IMF? What happens to all of these organizations? What happens to these people that have been using the system to benefit themselves? It all comes to a screeching end, which means they will no longer have the ability to push their agendas on the world. You see, their entire system depends on the private central bank, because if we go back, which I do believe we are going back, to the Constitution, and we have sound money, let's say we have a gold system, let's say Bitcoin is a part of that. Remember, there's a finite amount of gold, there's a finite amount of Bitcoin. There's an endless amount of the paper currency that the central bank pushes. So the system that we're going back to is the actual opposite of what we have today. Now, if there's a finite amount of Bitcoin and finite amount of gold, does that mean the price of Bitcoin and price of gold must move up? Yes, it does. If you have an unlimited supply of fiat currency, what happens to the currency? It declines in value. So you have two different currencies. They're the complete opposite of each other. And this is what our founding fathers have been warning us about for a very long time. They called the central bankers money changers. And we could see once we go back to the Constitution, once we go back to sound money, what that means is the currency that we have increases in value. And plus, since we're not borrowing it from a criminal organization, we don't need the taxes to pay back the interest. We can collect the money, the Bitcoin, I do believe, or gold, via tariffs or the sale of oil. Think about how wealthy this country is going to get. Now, once again, once we start deregulating and once we start to bring back manufacturers and energy is really cheap, this country is going to thrive like we've never seen before. And Trump has already set it up. Everything is already put into place. And once the central bank tries to make their